In this lesson, we're going to learn how to set up a hierarchy in 3D Studio Max. So here is a robot arm that I created primarily out of primitives. Again, when you're creating something like this, let's just go back to this view, and let's just create a quick sphere so I can demonstrate what I'm talking about. So when I say using primitives and modifying them to kind of create this object, just kind of, let's zoom back out. So you see now that I have in wireframe, you can kind of see how these different objects were created. Let's turn this on, rotate it. So like, for example, this little piece in the center here, you can see that one way to do this is, I just created a sphere, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a edit poly modifier on it so I can make some changes. This is just a matter of selecting faces and taking advantage of some of the options you're getting with the edit poly modifier, such as extrude, so you can make some of these bar pieces. You can use inset to kind of create more subtle changes. Oops. So as you can see, kind of taking advantage of those functions within edit poly. Another thing you can do, let's just get rid of this altogether. As you can see, for the claws up here, I just created a spline and then extruded it. So just kind of get creative. This is a great opportunity to kind of showcase what you guys know, and just make a very basic robotic arm to help you through this exercise. And I'm going to go back to front. All right. So once you have created your robotic arm, let's go to this view right here. Now what we need to do is kind of tell 3D Studio Max what these different pieces relationship are to one another. So as you can see, like if I select, this is basically one piece of the arm. I've got another one here. I've got the base. I've got this little piece right here that functions kind of like a wrist, and these we'll just call the fingers, right? So the first thing we need to do is that when we rotate these, obviously as I just created these, if I want to rotate them, and what I'm going to suggest again, for your reference coordinate system, just click on local. That's just going to make it a little less of a headache to kind of manipulate these different pieces. So when I rotate this, you see that it rotates from the center, and that's not exactly what I want. I want it to rotate down here at the base of the claw. So what I'm going to do, let's go to my side view. Again, I'm hitting Alt-W, to whatever viewport I've selected, I hit Alt-W and it kind of zooms in on that. So what I want to do is go over to the hierarchy menu, and with pivot selected, I want to select Effect Pivot Only. And you can see these little big arrows pop up, and I'm going to click on the Move tool. And what I'm going to do is, what I'm doing is changing where this rotates from, right? So let's say I want it, let's just put it right about there. So if I look at it from a top view, I want to make sure that it's right in the center, which it is. So now I'm going to unclick that, and let's go back to this view. I'm going to click on that. So now when I rotate it, it's going to rotate from there. And that's, doesn't quite work the way I want to, because when I open it that far up, then you can see the bottom of that. So let's go back. And I'm going to go back to Effect Pivot. I'm going to move this a little lower. Unclick. That's better. So I'm going to do the same thing over here with the other finger. For some reason that one doesn't have a base. It's fine, you're not going to see the bottom of that anyways. Okay, so now we have those two pieces. And it's okay that it kind of breaks the edge there, because it's only going to open up that far, because you can see there's the lip of that piece right there. Alright, so now I'm going to go down to the wrist, and this is just basically, it's not really going to bend, it's just going to rotate, but it's going to rotate from down here. So I will affect the pivot. I'm going to move it down about there. That's fine. And again, this is kind of why it's a good way to model it this way, where it's kind of extended out, because it makes it a lot easier to kind of set up where all these rotation points are. Affect pivot, and I'm going to move this down to the center of kind of this ball joint right there. And again, kind of make sure from multiple angles that you're getting it right in the center. So now, if I turn that off, I can see that it's rotating in the right place. And I'm going to go down here. And I modeled this at the center coordinate, so it's at 0, 0, 0, so that I can just simply move these up and down. Or sorry, the pivot points, so I don't have to actually look at it from multiple views. But it doesn't hurt to check, so always kind of go back and make sure everything's exactly where you need to be. So again, it's about right. I'm going to check from, that's from the front, so I'm going to check at the side view here. That looks like it's at the center. And the base itself doesn't really matter, because you know, we're not really animating the base per se, so, but just for sake of argument, I'm just going to put it down at the base. Okay, so that should put all of our rotation points in the right place. Be sure and double check as you need to. Oops. Alright, so now the next thing we need to do is we need to kind of set up the hierarchy in terms of, obviously when this upper arm piece moves, the wrist needs to go with it, which it currently does not. So there's several ways to do this, and I'm going to go to this view because it's just a little bit easier on the eyes. So obviously when this like I said, the upper arm moves, the wrist needs to go with it. Well, actually, let's start at the top. So wherever the wrist goes, these two finger pieces need to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have this piece selected, and I'm going to select the select and link piece right here. And you can see it highlights after you select it. And I'm just going to click on this finger piece and drag it over to the wrist. Right? And you see it kind of highlighted for a second and then let go. Okay, so now I am going to select this one and do the same thing. Click and drag. So now when I select these pieces, they're going to move with the wrist, right? And this is kind of like thinking about your own fingers and your wrist. Obviously, when you bend your wrist, your fingers move with it. So now that we have that, now we need to kind of take we got to take that wrist and we got to parent it to this arm. So now when I rotate this, everything should go with it. And then so I'm going to take that piece, which I think I call the upper arm. I'm sorry, that's what I call this lower piece the upper arm, and this is the lower arm. Be sure you name everything, because it's going to make it a lot less confusing when you set up your hierarchy. So as you can see, when I select this, the name comes up here. And you just name it by, once you have it selected, you can just go up here and type whatever you'd like. So now I need to select this top arm, or I'm sorry, lower arm, and link it to this one. And then lastly, I'm going to select this upper arm and link it to the base. So now everything should be working correctly. Now the thing to remember is the reason we set up those rotation points first is because when we, like, say we move this upper arm, we want it to pivot from this area right here, not from the center. So it's very important to set up those pivot points first before you start linking objects. Okay, so now that we have that, you are basically set up and ready to animate. Now, if there is another way to do this, I started with the more complex because I think it's this way kind of gives you a little bit more visual reference, so I thought it would be better to start there. So the other way you can do this is by going into your graph editors and go to New Schematic View. And you can see that it just kind of gives you a kind of text representation of each of your pieces. So I'm going to undo out of all this to go back to before I started linking objects. So that's what it looks like before you link objects. So I can simply go by names. So arm claw left, I can take the connect function here and click and drag it to the wrist. I can take the arm claw right and click it and drag it to the wrist, and then click the wrist, connect it to the lower arm to the upper arm to the base. Obviously that's a lot faster, but again, I just kind of wanted you guys to have that visual representation of what it is we're doing. So after you do you link all your objects one of those two ways, you are ready to animate.